2 weeks have come and gone. And I, of course, speak of 2 weeks of the Roguetemple Fortnight. So, back on September 1st of 2025, the Roguetemple's Fortnight basically made its appearance. I believe this is basically the first jam of its type. There might be like more to basically come in the future for it, but for now, this is basically the first one. And the challenge is basically to create a traditional roguelike in 2 weeks. And specifically, it's like, covering like the definition that like, Slashy, the developer, or not developer, the host of like, Roguetemple's Fortnight, basically put here. For those who don't know, Slashy basically is the curator of like Temple of the Roguelike. Is it this here? And he basically curates this like, little form over here. He sometimes has like these little like, posts every so often, and one of them basically corresponds to this right here. Basically, you're creating a game that's basically turn-based, run-based, has permanent consequences, procedural concentration, and is built around a single character or small comparative characters. Essentially, it's like, the good old retro traditional roguelike for the most part. And, it basically gives a little bit more rare. You basically read if you want to, check it out. There's the rules right there. So, back in like, well, a long time ago at this point, I made a post that basically I would be like, covering games here. And people would be like, free to basically like, request me to basically do their videos or like, contact me somehow. So, send me an email, post here, leave messages on HIO, whatever. A few people basically already done that so far. So, I think we'll basically honor their request and basically get some games out for them. At least one of them tonight. Now, what I've basically done here, I've actually gone like made like a little like Excel sheet or like Google Sheet basically in like Google Sheets. What's going to basically happen here? I basically like taking like the send-URL instructions from like the past send-URL they've basically been doing, and the idea here is that I'm going to basically like go through and like do sort of like ranking for these like games like coming up with a couple caveats. First and foremost, I'm not really bound to actually have to use the send-URL rule set for like judging games if I'm basically the one actually judging the games and there's like no curator basically like controlling what I basically do. So there's some revised instructions here for you guys basically to like know about what I'm basically doing with like judging these games. I plan on getting entries, randomizing them, and doing a number of attacks to do the entry I draw. So that's why basically over here, note that basically these like games basically have like 1, 2, 3 right next to them. I'm basically going to use a random number there right here. I could use any, but let's use this one right here. And the idea will just be like I'll get a random number between like 1 and 3, pick the one, and we'll just like play it. And depending if like if more people basically like request like games, I'll basically keep adding to the list. But for now, there's like 3 games, so that's what we're just going to work with. When I pick a game, I'll play it, review it, and paste it in the review game section. So, kind of like the send-URL. Basically, you eliminate games that you like you've played, you go to the ones you haven't played, etc., etc. Essentially, what's going to go on here is like I'll take a game, like say take like 2 here. I'll knock off like 2 from the list. That'll make like Urban like number 3 and like or number 2, and any games that basically add will be like 3, 4, 5 after that. And this game will basically go over here when it's basically done. So that'll be the plan. I'm going to use a 1 to 5 scoring system. Now, for those who like pay attention to the send-URLs, they basically use a 1, 2, 3 system, and I've always basically despised that system like quite a bit. I realize why it's basically done, but I do realize I'm a person that thinks that like you need to have like a scale for really judging games because sometimes you might recommend a game, but it's not a game that like you get like full marks to. Other times like it's not terrible, but it's definitely like not like par, shall we say. So this is where you want to basically have like an official system that sort of like correspond to that. I think like a 1 to 5 system is probably like, best for like all of rating systems, and that's what I'm basically going to go for here. And you can basically see like a breakdown of like what basic thinking strength basically is all about. So 1, this was really insufficient. 2, the effort went to this entry at the very least. 3, dismiss the mark by what to be aimed for. 4, this is close enough to expected for a Cinderella, and 5, clearly exceeding the standard. Now, note by the way, I basically have like 4 here, so close to what would be expected of a Cinderella. My plan basically right here is I'm going to actually like judge these as if they were Cinderellas, because the idea of like, the Fortnite here is not so much that basically like, you're supposed to be like, using 2 weeks like, dead stop, like, from start to finish, trying to like create something in 14 days. The idea is like you actually have more time to actually like, kick back, do other things, come back, code. You're not basically like, grinding for 7 days to try to like, create a game here. And that's basically one of the things right down here. So yeah, complete a game in 7 days is a great exercise on productive management. However, it may not be enough time to fully develop and polish an interesting gameplay idea at a healthy pace of work. And that's the thing, a healthy pace of work. It's not healthy basically like, doing it as a 7-year-old sometimes. So this is like, expect like say like, these games to be like, 7-year-old like, quality, so to speak. Because, even though you could probably like go over and exceed like 14 days, and yes, I basically have like clearly exceeding the standard, you've actually gone past the 7 days. It's not really recommended for us like, jam, and, I'll basically judge you correlate as a result. So, 4, yeah, you basically have, you've done what you need to for the most part. That's basically like the top marks basically we really should aim for here. Alright, much like with the Cinderellas earlier this year, I only plan to do like 24 minutes. I actually do think there's actually a fairly good like, thing here. Like, you want basically like put in some effort to sort of like play the game, but at the same time, if you're basically like, playing these games, you don't want to basically go over the top, so to speak. I mean, there's only 3 games right now for me to see like, play here, but, there might be more games in the future. I don't always spend like, hours after hours just trying to like beat a game if like, it's like other games basically after I want to be playing. Let's get rid of this right now. Also note, by the way, I reserve the right to end my reviews if I think I've been too harsh or too lenient, as the case may be. Something you don't actually get to see a lot because you sort of like get the reviews basically like, after it is all done. But I'm actually will admit to be one of the viewers to actually go back to actually like, edit my reviews after basically like done them. Basically like, sometimes basically I'll play a game and I might have a very bad like, go of the game, shall we say. And as a result of that, I might like, mark it harshly. And I'm not really a big like, fan of like, if I'm being like harsh on a game when it's like not really deserving it, I want to actually be able to go back and like, edit to be like, raising the score. It's also like the inverse here as well. If it's like, a game that I'm basically like, really enjoying, but, when I think back to it, it's like, maybe it wasn't that great. I can also like, demerit some points as well, as the case may be, as I basically say here. Now, one thing to basically note here is that basically in regards to like the ratings here, I am basically like, rating these similar to like a Cinderella. But there is one exception, and that's basically the rule latest rating. These games basically like, the idea here is that these are like, traditional roguelikes. There really shouldn't be any need to like, judge if these are like, are roguelike or not, because they should all be roguelikes. And Slash has been like, going through and like, slashing away any games that basically aren't roguelike from like the, the jam. So there's that too. But, for the most part, when it basically comes to like, ranking like, games like, the roguelikeness basically here, this is really just a yes or no. Is it a roguelike? Is it not a roguelike? There's not really anything really to say outside of that. I'm almost tempted so yes, get rid of it, but I'll leave it there for now. Alright, well, this is just sort of like, a brief little video to sort of like, give an idea of what my thoughts basically are going for like, this like, little jam here and like, viewing stuff. All it's basically left to do is basically to like, pick a game and rank it. So, I'll see you guys when I do that.